This is Random Cinema with Greg and Jace. And I'm Jason, and this is Greg. Good morning, afternoon, evening.
Yes, literally, good morning for you and good evening for me, as you are on the other side of the world than I am.
This is episode 0, and this episode, Greg, we're going to let the folks out there know what is Random Cinema, what's it going to be about, and how all this madness is going to work.
Sounds good to me.
Absolutely. So this is something, let's be honest to the guys, put together pretty quickly. Like, we had spoken, I would say, less than 6 weeks ago, and we both claimed at the time, we're going to come up with an idea. It might be great to work together. Let's come up with an idea, stew on it, and maybe plan for something in 2026.
Exactly. Well, here's what I could say. I could say that a couple of things. I swore I would never podcast to even begin with, and here I am on my 5th podcast. But then as we spoke because the Star Trek Strange New World season had started, and then I'm a regular guest in the Captain's Quadrant chat, and you're on Captain's Quadrant, and we shared exactly the same thoughts, folks. That's exactly what happened. And in chatting, we found, there might be a rapport here where perhaps we should do a podcast together. What that podcast was, we weren't sure at that time. And then it was announced in the last bonus show of Star Trek The Undiscovered podcast that we were cooking something up.
That's correct. And the idea didn't come to us immediately what we were going to do, but you are right. I think we're definitely in sync when it comes to pop culture, film, television, and things like that. But we did come up with the idea that we both love films. We grew up, seeing way too many movies rather than going out and living life in the sunshine. I know I did, Greg. No, we've got a giant back catalogue history of film and thought, wouldn't it be great to go and talk about the last 50 years of cinema, which kind of ages us, but nevertheless, I will say I'm the senior in this group. Probably not by much though, Greg. I don't even know how old you are.
What? I will do my podcast catchphrase now. That's a perfect segue. Folks, I'm going to embarrass Jace right now by saying, and he made a good point with, that's just what people need. Another podcast with middle-aged men reviewing movies. That's exactly what people need, and I couldn't agree with you more. Perhaps this podcast should have been called Oh, Our Aching Backs and Movies.
It is pretty well much that. We are a couple of Generation X's. Yes, but it'll be our take, our fresh take. And I'll tell you what's unique about our show, Greg, is I'm on one side of the planet, you're on the other. So we both have very similar tastes in film, but how did we get to that point, living the opposite sides of the planet? So I thought that was a great idea. And then you had another really good addition to the show, was the fact that it would be in kind of a way, and I'll get you to explain it, Greg, guest-driven.
Yes. I have a history of all my podcasts that I choose the films. In this case, this needed a different hook than anything I've ever done, but a hook that I haven't seen around, maybe different variations of this, but this is what we're going to do. So we are going to explore 50 years of cinema here, but we will not go in order. We're going to start at 1975 and go through 2025. But hey, next year is already 2026. So the 50-year window, if you will. We will have a guest on each show, which is going to happen in the first episode. The guest will be given an option of 4 years through the last 50 years. They'll be giving an option of 4 years. They choose the year, and then after they choose a year, they choose any film whatsoever in that year. Anything that was released, it doesn't matter whether it was something Jason and I have seen, something they have seen, something we never saw, whether it's an Oscar-winning film, a popular film, an under-the-radar indie, or a literal steaming pile of crap. Doesn't matter what.
The one thing I think this taps into, Greg, is us celebrating what our guests love. So as much as we are the host of the show, we get the bonus of hearing somebody else be passionate about a film that they like, have always wanted to see. It helps expand our film knowledge as well by seeing, hearing other perspectives. So, which I think is great. Now, just to also address the 1975. Why did we start at 1975? Yes, it's 50. We could probably call the show, it'll be 50 plus years. We'll say that, because I myself am 50 plus. So, no, 1975 is recognized globally as the year of the first ever blockbuster, being Jaws. Was the first time there has been a summer release that literally captivated, an entire population.
Not only that, here in America, 1975 is closely associated with the premiere of Saturday Night Live, and we all know that that also had an impact on the film world over the past 50 years as well.
Great point. Great point. So, yeah, you've got a couple of big hitters that make significant cultural changes to the landscape. So,
And my sister was born that year.
Yes. I was a measly 2 years old, Greg. Probably being taken to films I shouldn't have been watching anyway. And when it comes to my knowledge of films, it comes from a childhood because I'm a Generation Xer. My parents didn't really care about cinema ratings. Whatever they wanted to see, I saw. So, yes, I saw films that maybe these days you wouldn't take your kid to. But, because my family was so into film, I also was made aware of the behind the scenes of film. So I knew if I saw blood in a film, I knew it was golden syrup with a bit of red dye. I knew all the behind the scenes things, how they did the tricks and all that kind of thing, which was fantastic. So throughout my film verse, especially in the late 70s and early 80s, it was dominated by a cinema experience and a VHS experience.
Hence your name of VHS Jace.
Exactly. I'm stuck in a format that I still love to this day.
I'll make this brief. The first film, a lot of people talk about the first time they saw Star Wars and that they were in awe. And if Jaws was the first blockbuster, Star Wars was perhaps the first one that maybe universally was your mouth is hanging open. You're in awe of it. You're amazed by it. There was nothing like it before. If Jaws set in motion what Star Wars became, but with Jaws, it was almost like this was going to be the first biggest blockbuster. And with Star Wars, they didn't know how huge it was going to be. But my first memory is not of a Star Wars film. It was Ghostbusters. And I was 5 years old. I had to sit on an armrest watching this movie because I was that little and there were people I couldn't see above them. And I saw this movie completely in awe of it. And that's what inspired me to love comedy and the paranormal and like effects driven comedies. Comedies on an epic scale. I went with a neighbor. I came home to my father. I said, Dad, I just saw the greatest film ever made. And I explained Ghostbusters. He goes, well, those two guys came from a show called Saturday Night Live.
Wow.
And then I got introduced to SNL that way. And then SNL became inspiration for my own stuff that you can see on my YouTube channel, which we will plug later.
We will. Certainly. I mean, I remember seeing Ghostbusters a little bit older than you and being a transformative experience. And I think you kind of also tapped into something that was very good for our generation growing up and seeing film, was that comedy, fantasy, special effects driven film. Because you say that, think of Ghostbusters, I'm thinking immediately after that, you can throw in your Back to the Futures, you can throw in your Inner Space, you can throw in even like kids films like Explorers, and you can go on and on and on. And essentially, they were smart films because they captured an all audience. Grandma and Grandpa loves Ghostbusters, and so does a 5-year-old. And certainly I think that's one of the magic about cinema is it can do that, and certainly what we hope to explore with this show, Greg, is everybody's kind of their comfort blanket, their film that they've always wanted to see, maybe couldn't, or the film that they watch religiously like every year. Do you have a film series, Greg, that you watch every single year? Because I do. I do.
Well, I watch my favorite movie of all time, Defending Your Life, at least once a year. That is coming up on my other podcast, Real Reactions, in the review with Kyle
Oh,
Bain.
what a great
I
film.
Yes. I try to watch. I have a quote unquote guilty pleasure film in Dinner for Schmucks with Steve Carell and Paul Rudd. This is a film that I love that not many other people do, but that doesn't
Yes.
matter. And that is the film that I try to watch on New Year's Eve. I try to give Batman films across from Keaton to Pattinson. I try to watch all of them
Yeah.
once a year. I watch, especially if I watch The Dark Knight, though, it has to be the whole trilogy. I only own a few films, and Shawshank is one of them. I mean, I realize that that's a cliched thing to say, but that's one of my favorites.
It's a cliche
And
for a
some,
reason, though, because it's one of the great American cinema films in the last 40 years. I mean, there's a reason why it's cliche for everyone loves it, because it's true. You know?
and one thing that is a misconception that some of my friends have that know my opinion on films is one thing that's a misconception is that I hate watch things or I don't watch things like Marvel because I prejudge that I'm not going to like them or something. And that is not the case. It is that it's just those superhero movies that are so big now aren't really my cup of tea, with the exception of if a Batman film comes out. Those are my jam of comic book films and superhero films. But the thing about me is that if it's not my cup of tea, there's a difference between a bad film and a film that isn't your cup of tea. And if it's not my cup of tea, I don't mind that it exists or anything. I don't begrudge people that love those movies. I realize that they bring comfort and joy to many people, but it's just not my thing. That's all. So it's a misconception that I judge them or that I think they're bad, or, hey, if that's what works for you, that's what works for you, you know?
Art is subjective. So
Mhm.
essentially, films are art. So, of course, some people are going to like them and some people are not. And even those that like them will like them for different reasons. My trilogy, we watch one trilogy with my son every Christmas time, and that's the Lord of the Rings trilogy. So,
Look at that. And the first director of the first movie we have next show is Peter
it
Jackson.
is a segue. It is a great segue, which is kind of odd. I do find with Peter Jackson that a lot of people go, "Who's this guy?" when he made Lord of the Rings. And I was always like, well, I know this guy a lot. He made some awesome horror films back in
And
the
I
day.
know him from The Frighteners, which is by
Yes.
total coincidence the next Real Reactions with Greg and Kyle. And I guess I should
Frighteners.
spoil. Kyle Bain will be our first guest in the next
Yes.
episode.
And the
he
film
chose- It is Meet the Feebles from 1989. This is an example of that I'm looking forward to on this podcast, is when we'll be watching movies, both Jace and I, that we wouldn't have watched otherwise, perhaps. And sometimes when the guest is given a random year, as Kyle was, he went through a list of releases, thought that Meet the Feebles sounded intriguing, and it was directed by Peter Jackson, which was pure coincidence that he's the Frighteners of what we're doing on Real Reactions. And so
it's
that
his
will be
second
our
film. Yeah, it's his second film.
and I happen to have seen Bad Taste by Peter Jackson with a girlfriend. Back in the summer of 2000, I saw that movie. I was in awe of it for both good and bad reasons. But
that is a love letter to indie filmmaking. If you look at how they made that film and the result, it is absolutely one of the great examples of what you could do if you have the determination, grit, and commit your weekends, because that's what
it kind of did was pave the way for a movie like, now, while it's not my favorite film, there's no denying what it did brilliantly, and that's the Blair Witch Project. So you had Bad Taste with Peter Jackson showing you schlock, but on purpose. This is a low budget film that I'm making on a shoestring budget, possibly even an out of pocket budget. Here's what I can do with that. And just showed you, and it's almost like it's it's not taking itself too seriously, and that's a great thing. And with the Blair Witch Project, as much as that might have not, it's a product of its time. With that, it's two guys had a camcorder and figured out how to make a big hit movie with it, and also show filmmakers you can do this. And Blair Witch kind of helped the indie film revolution back in '99. Absolutely.
Well,
that.
you're saying that, you talk about that. In fact, it was the late 80s that independent revolution started. This is where we started to get people like Peter Jackson, Quentin Tarantino, Kevin Smith, Jim Jarmusch, like Sam Raimi. Well, even Sam Raimi was a little bit earlier. I mean, he's the grandfather of independent filmmaking back with Evil Dead back in 1980. And then, yes, when you get to the late 90s, here's something where the independent scene had been out and almost started to become mainstream. And here's these guys with a camcorder in the forest blow everything out of the water. Like, there was independent movies, and then there was the Weinstein Company independent, Miramax.
Pardon the expression, yeah.
Yeah, Miramax. So you'd get your $5-10 million budget. These guys did it, I think, for a packet of crackers and, I don't know, a beer maybe. Like, it was so cheap but so effective. So, yeah, I mean, out of all the films of night, and the thing is, I've got to say with Kyle, we gave him 4 years, and the 4 years we gave him was for very specific for a reason. Were 1982, 1989, 1975, wasn't it? Yes, and then 1999. And the reason I mentioned those 4 years is because they were notably in cinematic history years where we had a glut of just amazing films, like jam-packed summers, films that we had, like, you couldn't believe that come out like basically 2 weeks after each other. And 89 was one of those summers, because you're talking Batman, Back to the Future, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. If you're into Lethal Weapons, they were there. You name it, the list goes on and on and on.
I didn't. I definitely saw Batman, but I was 10, so I was waiting on Ghostbusters 2. Star Trek 5 was that year. And
Star Trek 5, yeah. Ghostbusters 2. So I love the fact that Kyle avoided all of that.
Yes.
He's avoided all of that and gone with this, which is, to me, I'm delighted. So I haven't even met Kyle in person, but I'm already a fan of this dude, I gotta say, because that was an inspired choice.
What a symbolic show that my two podcasting partners in crime will be on the real first episode of this show.
Oh, yes. This is just for the audience to get to know us, who we are, what the show's going to be all about. We're really excited to be doing this because we think it's got a lot of potential, and it's got its own little plot twist. So way we're doing it.
And here's how I will complete my sentiments for this episode 0. So, folks, you may have heard other movie podcasts with middle-aged men before, but this is the middle-aged men movie podcast with Greg and Jace.
Exactly. It's going to be different. I do think we can offer some value to the audience out there. I certainly have some weird eclectic tastes and takes on things. And I know you do too, Greg. And like I said, this is us not only just being egotistical and doing a podcast with us two.
Self-indulgent,
the opposite. We are. No, we're not. I would disagree. This is our first disagreement, Greg. We are not. We are being selfless because we are going to be passengers like the audience into the journeys of some of the most, I think some of the most talented people I know personally will be joining us over the next few months and years, hopefully decades. You never know, Greg. Could be decades.
Unless we have that big blowout that hasn't happened yet.
Yes. It'll be over something like a romantic comedy or something. You wait. Some like really nothing film.
I want to speak to the creatives that are listening, creatives that go into a creative partnership as we just did. This would be an example, and I am certainly not being a sycophant to Jace here. This is an example of, and if people go to my YouTube channel, they could see some movies that had this behind the scenes, people. And that is that in the creative process that Jace and I had in creating this podcast, it was literally joint. So I am not taking the credit for this. Jace is not taking full credit.
No.
This was literally and absolutely out of both of our minds that this podcast and the concept came
Oh,
to
it's
be.
a 50-50 split, no doubt.
Absolutely.
No doubt. And, you know, the other thing I'd like to add, the fact that you are, when we talk being creatives, we're both producers. You know, I do video podcast producing. You've done a lot of audio podcast producing, but you've also been in the industry for a while, doing your own things, being a creative. I myself have a short film out there that I'll have to, Greg doesn't even know that yet. I'll show him at some point. So, yeah, we've both been around, maybe not as much as the podcast you could hear about there, but most of all, we're fans. We love movies. So, and I think that is the most important skill set we bring to this show, Greg, is that we are just true, honest fans who just want to talk to other honest, great fans.
And I'm so excited about another thing that we do over at Real Reactions is we want to inspire, even if you're not interested in the film we're talking about. I love inspiring people to see films that they wouldn't have otherwise watched, especially if they want to get into the film industry, to check out everything. I recently did that with The Devil Wears Prada and was pleasantly surprised. I've forced myself, for lack of a better word, to watch films I wouldn't have otherwise watched. And we are doing this and more on this podcast. And I encourage people to look at that and say, oh, maybe I should check out that film that I wouldn't have otherwise checked out. And even I have to get less stubborn about doing that, about checking out films that I wouldn't have otherwise, and convinced that I wouldn't like it or something. You know, it's like broaden your horizons, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, guys, we're just pretty well going to wrap it up now. This has been episode 0 of Random Cinema with Greg and Jace. A quick introduction on who we are and what we're going to do. We already have a bunch of guests lined up, and we will suggest release times. This will be a monthly show. So every month you'll be able to download a brand new episode of Random Cinema from all these social media platforms or wherever you can find good podcasts. I would say Spotify being one of them, on YouTube.
We're going to be on Spotify. We're going to be on YouTube, and we'll announce, of course, and share links of other places. We'll, as a new podcast, it takes time to get to every platform, but Spotify, YouTube, and other places, I guess. But you definitely can find us there for now. And I can give people information on where they can contact us and also find us on the socials if you'd like, Jace.
I would say that would be excellent.
All right, so right now, follow us on Facebook and Instagram just by searching Random Cinema with Greg and Jace. Over on X, we have a different handle, and that's at randomgreg_Jace. And we're at Blue Sky at Random Cinema. And let me tell you, this is the beauty of Blue Sky not being, developing as a social media platform. There are other podcasts called Random Cinema, and it's very hard to name a podcast these days because thousands or maybe millions are doing it. But we're the first that got Random Cinema. So over on Blue Sky, just find us at Random Cinema, plus all the Blue Sky gibberish that follows that you know what it is.
Fantastic.
And how can I forget? Email us if you'd like. If you are interested in being a guest, we definitely, of course, have our own usual suspects that's going to come on here as guests. But if you want to come on here as guests, we're not going to know that if you don't tell us. So email us. Jace and I both could answer that email at randomcinemawithgregandjace@gmail.com. Shoot us an email if you want to be on. And, of course, we'll have you on.
Fantastic. I couldn't have put it better myself, Greg. We're really excited about this show. We can't wait for you all to join us on this journey. And that has been Random Cinema, yes, with Greg and Jace. Thanks for listening to the show, everybody. If you also want to find me out there on the interwebs, you can catch me at Talking to Me over on YouTube. You can also find me over on the at Jason Roy Gaston YouTube channel, where we're having fun and shenanigans. And lastly, you can also find me occasionally working with the boys at the Captain's Quadrant, the amazing, unique Star Trek show for everybody to enjoy.
And you can find me, Greg Vorob, let me spell my last name for you, Vorob, on YouTube at Greg Vorob, where you can check out a lot of my film projects, Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at Greg Vorob, on Facebook, find me as a friend, Greg Vorob, or like my professional page. Also, Real Reactions with Greg and Kyle, podcast-wise, but remember that's REEL. Real Reactions with Greg and Kyle is currently exclusively on Spotify and iHeartRadio. And of course, Star Trek The Undiscovered podcast, in which you could check me out as the showrunner and main moderator for the first 3 seasons. There's also enough bonus shows to constitute its own season. And of course, check out Star Trek The Undiscovered podcast with Jeff Howell and Ken Radner. Don't forget to check out our extended family of podcasts, the aforementioned Captain's Quadrant, live every Friday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time on their YouTube channel at Captain's Quadrant. Happiness and Darkness, the superhero movie podcast. Gold Standard, the Oscars podcast. The Five-ish Fangirls. Twin Cities Trekkies. Bullshit Hour with John Seymour and its subsidiary, This Podcast is Lamb Chops, and The Hour of Comics is Upon Us with John Seymour, Jason Gurin, and Ken Radner. Find them wherever you get your podcasts.
Excellent, Greg. I will also add a couple more to that family. Please go and check out the Sci-Fi Queens. Nita runs that every fortnight, Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's a wonderful show. And if you want to see an Australian point of view on trailer reactions, go check out at Pop Culture Spread, as Rick Perrone and occasionally myself will go back and look at some trailers that are new and some of they are old.
Thank you once again for listening to Random Cinema with Greg and Jace, and we will see you on the next show.